also our favorite girl singer. Would you welcome Linda Ronstadt?
The moment that changed music history. Imagine yourself in a cramped Laurel Canyon apartment, 1972. A teapot screeches, not as a call for tea, but as an alarm clock for two aspiring musicians, Glenn Frey and J.D. Souther. Downstairs, another young songwriter, Jackson Browne, obsessively loops a melody on his piano. This bohemian scene wasn't just a snapshot of struggling artists, it was ground zero for a musical revolution. And at the center of it all, one name stands out: Linda Ronstadt. How did Linda Ronstadt launch the Eagles? We all know the Eagles. Hotel California. Take It Easy, a soundtrack to the American dream. But what if I told you their incredible rise hinged on a single decision by Linda Ronstadt? What if one of her biggest contributions to music was something other than singing? This is the untold story of how Linda Ronstadt didn't just sing great songs, but built one of the greatest bands of all time. The Troubadour scene, where it all began. When Linda Ronstadt first met J.D. Souther at the Troubadour, he was crashing in a humble Echo Park apartment with Glenn Frey. Upstairs, Glenn and J.D. were busy forging their sound as the duo Long Branch Penny Whistle. Downstairs? That was Jackson Browne's place, his mornings marked by the screech of a teapot that doubled as an alarm clock for Glenn and J.D. Moments later, Jackson would be at his piano working out the same song over and over until the melody filled the walls and stuck with everyone who heard it. Glenn Frey couldn't help but take note of Jackson's songwriting routine, looping the same verse and chorus again and again until it clicked. Glenn was soaking up every bit of insight he could on the craft of making music, all while he and J.D. spent nearly every waking hour at the Troubadour, the unofficial classroom where their real education took shape. They had been gigging around L.A. after cutting their debut album, but it didn't take off. When the duo called it quits, Glenn Frey and J.D. Souther stood at a crossroads until a new door cracked open for Frey. That twist of fate would steer him toward his future songwriting partner, the formation of the Eagles, and eventually to a charged moment in a London studio where someone fired off a biting remark, "You're not a rock and roll band. The Who are a rock and roll band, and you're not that." Linda's vision, the backup band, and Shiloh. It's a remarkable journey that kicks off in Southern California right as the country rock scene is catching fire. When Linda Ronstadt needed a backup band for her East Coast tour, she reached out to Glenn Frey and asked him to come along. Not long after, she caught a set by a band called Shiloh at the Troubadour and couldn't help but notice their singing drummer. Though she had no idea at the time, Linda Ronstadt had just crossed paths with the roots of what would soon become one of the most iconic bands in music history. It's worth noting, Linda wasn't just a phenomenal singer. She had a rare gift for identifying a great song and elevating it into something unforgettable. A true song stylist, just like she did with so many tracks that would go on to soundtrack the very essence of American friendship. Both men came from humble, working-class beginnings. Glenn Frey grew up in Detroit, his dad worked in an auto factory, and his mom baked pies for General Motors. At just 16, Glenn crossed paths with Bob Seger, who took him under his wing and even let him sing backup on Ramblin' Gamblin' Man. But the rock and roll dreams hit a speed bump when Glenn's mom caught him smoking pot in the basement. She shut it down fast, even calling Seger's manager to say Glenn wouldn't be coming back. Don Henley, meanwhile, was raised in Linden, Texas, where his father also worked in the auto business. Every spare quarter went toward Don's future. He and his dad would buy U.S. savings bonds each week to help pay for college. Don would go on to study English for over 3 years, a decision that would quietly shape the lyrical weight and introspection that became a signature of his songwriting. And like Glenn, Don also finds guidance from a local legend, Kenny Rogers and the First Edition. Kenny sees something in him, takes Don's band Shiloh under his wing, and brings them out to Los Angeles, unknowingly setting the wheels in motion for a life-changing moment at the Troubadour, where Linda Ronstadt would soon discover them. The formation. Puzzle pieces fall into place. The puzzle pieces begin to fall into place. Guitarist Bernie Leadon, fresh off his run with the Flying Burrito Brothers, and bassist Randy Meisner, formerly of Poco, round out the group. Just like that, the Eagles are born. Laurel Canyon, the incubator. Meanwhile, back in Laurel Canyon, Linda and JD are now living together, where the lines between love and music begin to blur. JD starts writing some of his most iconic songs, including Faithless Love, which Linda records and makes her own. The tension and heartache in their relationship fuel his creativity, leading to deeply personal songs that Linda, with her unmatched voice, transforms into timeless classics. In those early days, Glenn and Don would head over to Linda and JD's place to rehearse, since they didn't have a space of their own. The apartment was so small that Linda and JD would step out just to give them room. It was in that cramped Laurel Canyon setting that Glenn and Don, shaped by their roots in the Midwest and Texas, began blending their influences, pushing country rock in a bold new direction. Their songs started filling up with the American idioms, landscapes, and stories they'd grown up on, laying the foundation for a sound that was distinctly their own. One of their first gigs was at an art gallery opening, with their Laurel Canyon peers looking on, Jackson Browne, Joni Mitchell, Mama Cass, all there to support. At the time, they didn't have many original songs under their belt, but they did have Witchy Woman. So they played it, then played it again, and again. And each time the room lit up as their friends got up and danced, showing their support the best way they knew how, with movement, energy, and love. The struggle, rejection, and reinvention. Soon after, the Eagles landed a deal with David Geffen's newly formed label, Asylum Records, and were sent off to Aspen, Colorado to write and refine songs for their debut. When it came time to record, they brought in legendary English producer Glyn Johns, known for his work with The Who and the Rolling Stones. But when Glyn first heard them, he wasn't exactly blown away. In fact, he was blunt, thinking to himself, "And you're not a rock and roll band. The Who are a rock and roll band, and you're not that." That subtle jab, wrapped in a British accent, was enough of a wake-up call. Enter producer Bill Szymczyk, who got exactly what the Eagles were after. A tougher, edgier rock sound. They left London behind and brought the recording back home to Los Angeles, where things finally clicked. With Szymczyk at the helm, they finished On the Border, cranking out tracks like Already Gone. Cashbox hailed it as the Eagles' best single release to date, praising it as a hard rocker driven by the group's incredible harmonies. However, the album's biggest hit, Best of My Love, actually came together back in London. Though it was recorded early on, it didn't truly shine until Bill Szymczyk gave it a fresh remix. The song, written by J.D. Souther, Glenn Frey, and Don Henley, would go on to become a defining ballad for the Eagles, marking their first #1 hit and solidifying the emotional core of their evolving sound. Glenn Frey later recalled, "I was playing acoustic guitar one afternoon in Laurel Canyon, trying to figure out a tuning that Joni Mitchell had shown me a couple of days earlier. I got lost and ended up with the guitar tuning for what would later turn out to be The Best of My Love. A happy accident that would go on to create one of the Eagles' most beloved songs." According to Don Henley, most of the lyrics for The Best of My Love were written while sitting in a booth at Dan Tana's, a restaurant just down the street from the Troubadour. The words were shaped in part by his recent breakup, adding a layer of raw honesty to the track. The song marked a major turning point. It became their most successful single to date and paved the way for their next #1. One hit, One of These Nights, in June 1975. That album would be their true breakthrough, launching the Eagles into international stardom. The evolution. From country rock to Hotel California. One of These Nights was Glenn and Don's deliberate move away from the band's country rock roots, a step toward something darker, groovier, and more soulful. In the liner notes of The Very Best Of, Glenn Frey reflected on the shift. "We had Don Henley's voice, which allowed us to go in a more soulful direction, which made me exceedingly happy. We made a quantum leap with One of These Nights. It was a breakthrough song. It is my favorite Eagles record. If I ever had to pick one, it wouldn't be Hotel California, it wouldn't be Take It Easy." For Glenn, this was the moment the Eagles truly found their edge. The song was originally started by Randy Meisner as a solo composition, but it remained unfinished by the time the band began recording One of These Nights. That's when Don Henley and Glenn Frey stepped in to help shape and complete it. The final result, co-written by Meisner, Henley, and Frey, would become another standout track on an album that marked a major evolution in the Eagles' sound. The album would go on to be the Eagles' fifth and feature their third number one. One single, New Kid in Town, written alongside the iconic Hotel California. That title track would become the band's signature song, haunting, poetic, and endlessly analyzed. Few songs in modern music have sparked as much speculation and folklore about their meaning, cementing its place as a cultural touchstone and one of the most mysterious tracks ever to top the charts. The song was co-written by Don Felder, Don Henley, and Glenn Frey after Felder sent over a demo packed with musical ideas. While the track became a massive success, it also sparked tension within the band, particularly with Randy Meisner. Though his soaring vocals helped define the song, Meisner struggled with the pressure of performing it live. The high notes left him anxious, and the mounting stress eventually boiled over. One night backstage, after yet another disagreement, things turned physical between Meisner and Frey. That moment marked a breaking point, and not long after, Meisner left the band. The unraveling, the long run, and the breakup. Following Randy Meisner's departure, the Eagles brought in Timothy B. Schmidt, the same musician who had replaced Meisner in Poco years earlier. While Schmidt's arrival marked a new chapter, the massive success of Hotel California and the grueling world tour that followed had already taken a heavy toll. Tensions were running high, and creative and personal relationships were wearing thin. When the long run dropped in September 1979, it signaled both a beginning and an end. It was Schmidt's debut with the band, but for the rest of the group, it marked the start of a slow unraveling. Still, the album delivered 3 top 10 hits: Heartache Tonight, Schmidt's smooth ballad, I Can't Tell You Why, and In the City by Joe Walsh. It would stand as their final studio release before the Eagles' 1980 breakup. Linda's legacy, the Hall of Fame. Along the way, the Eagles never forgot the woman who brought them together, who let them rehearse in her tiny home, championed them before anyone else did, and helped them dodge the dreaded sophomore slump. Linda Ronstadt was their biggest cheerleader from the very start, and they knew it. In 2014, Glenn Frey returned the favor by inducting her into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Because of health issues, Linda couldn't attend the ceremony, so Frey took the stage to deliver a heartfelt tribute and accept the honor on her behalf. His words reflected just how much she had meant, not only to him and the Eagles, but to American music as a whole. Linda's generosity, her ear for talent, and her unwavering support paid off in multitudes. Echoes of the era. The Eagles' story is steeped in Americanisms, their sound effortlessly capturing the laid-back, sun-soaked spirit that defines so much of the nation's character. While the band was driven by grit, ambition, and relentless work ethic, it was alongside Linda Ronstadt that they managed to distill the feeling of American life into music, right at the heart of a golden era. One of the most magical things about this chapter of country rock is how instantly transportive it is. Just press play and you're back in 1972, cruising down a quiet desert highway with the windows down, chasing that hidden spot in Joshua Tree to pitch a tent, strike a match, and howl at the moon under a blanket of stars. I hope you enjoyed that story. What do you think? What was Linda Ronstadt's greatest impact on music? And who are some other legends you'd like to learn more about? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more untold stories from the legends of music, the world of fame, film, and everything in between. See you in the next one.